We don't have military in Syria to make sure that we're going to be protected.
Oh boy, we do have military, 900 members of the United States military in Syria. So is it concerning perhaps that the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, doesn't either know, realize, or remember that we have 900 Americans fighting in Syria? Maybe it's gaffes like that that inform us why the White House press shop is so protective of the president. Take a look at this full screen with a tweet from former White House reporter Mark Knoller. By Mark's count, Mr. Biden has only done 9 interviews, 2 of which were with George Stephanopoulos, a former official in the Clinton administration. Meanwhile, by comparison, at this time, President Trump had done 50 interviews. President Obama was at 113. Joining us now, 2 people very familiar with dealing with optics and communications battle at the White House. JOHANNA MASKA worked for the Obama administration. ALYSSA Farah for the Trump administration. At one point had the job of Defense Press Secretary, which is now perhaps an unenviable job for Scott Kirby. We'll get to that in a minute. But let's start with you. How do you forget that we have 900 troops in Syria?
Well, not only that, Leland, President Biden was critical when we had this Turkish incursion into Syria back in 2019 under the Trump White House, and was somebody who then was fine putting out statements criticizing our response. So he was aware at that time, seems unaware under his own administration. But look, there's been kind of this back and forth about should he be talking more? Does he need to give remarks? In my opinion, the time has almost passed. It's actually almost better to get the operational updates from the Pentagon, the diplomatic updates from the State Department, rather than just have Biden out there saying God knows what and not even having a command of the facts. And by the way, it's not just the U.S. media and American public he's dodging. He's dodging America's allies. He apparently dodged calls for 30 hours from Boris Johnson. So this is an unmitigated disaster.
JOHANNA, is ALYSSA right that now that he's been sort of unseen, unquestioned on Afghanistan, he's going to go on vacation this weekend, that sort of a win for the White House press shop?
I don't think that anyone considers this a win. Look, we have both been in Afghanistan. All 3 of us have been in Afghanistan. I was there with President Obama 7 weeks after I delivered my son. And I remember then, it was 2012, I wanted to go home. And I remember that there were so many troops who didn't have that option. And there were so many problems then that we knew were ongoing. I mean, there were reports of our military officers complaining about the Afghan military officers and them having to look the other way when there were abuses with children. And so, you know, to look back and think that this was all perfect and that we had secured peace for people in Afghanistan, I think is a little rewriting history. Yeah. On the optics of this interview, I think ABC is putting out the snippets that they want, just the same as Leslie Stahl and CBS did when Donald Trump.
JOHANNA, you can't possibly say that George Stephanopoulos, who the joke was had a office in the Obama White House. Okay, you cannot possibly say that he was editing things to be hurtful to President Biden. Come on.
Let's be clear. He had actually the press secretary's office of the first female press secretary, as I understand it. So, you know, when he was in the Clinton White House, he actually was not part of our White House. I remember, I think it was.
I didn't say he was part of it. I said the joke was that he was so close to the Obama White House. The joke was he had an office there. But go ahead.
Well, I will say that's not my experience. But okay. I do also think that, you know, with these interviews, we've seen presidents get progressively more dug in. And I think it has to do
JOHANNA, with... if there's a simple way to do that, just hold a live press conference. Simple way to get around the Bites interviews.
He's at this point in time, I think exactly what ALYSSA said, you want the people who have all of the information, giving all of the information from those podiums. And I think that Biden was addressing the unfortunate images. And I think the answer he should have given was that image of so many people clinging to a United States Air Force, you know, we have a giant image of the United States on the side with people clinging because they want an empathetic America. And we have seen for a long time, too many people turn their backs to the globe. And I think we're going to see it again because we're going to, you know, Congress says now that they're all on the side of Afghanistan, but they were not actually on the side of military intervention in Syria. And they actually have made it more difficult. Stephen Miller made it more difficult. A number of people have made it more difficult.
It's interesting you bring up Stephen Miller's name because he's part of the next part of this conversation. which is members of the sort of Trump orbit, if you will, who are now talking about not taking the Afghan translators, the people who risked life and limb to protect our soldiers. Now they're saying, hey, we shouldn't take them because it's going to turn America into some cesspool of immigrants. The headline from The Hill, GOP riff opens up over resettling Afghan refugees. Alyssa, I know this is something that you're powerfully involved in. You think it's a problem for the GOP?
So I think it's overstated. I called out Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and some of the folks who have been saying, should we resettle them here? Of course we should. They were co-located, serving alongside American forces. They were vetted by the U.S. military. We have a moral obligation to do that. But I actually think it's overstated. The Hill had some polling that found that about 70% of Americans support bringing Afghan refugees who served, especially translators and interpreters, who served with the U.S. military and their families to the U.S. So this is something where there's going to be that wing of the Republican Party that wants to go fully nativist against any sort of refugees or immigration, but I don't think it's the overarching number.
I know it's certainly not the overarching numbers, just whether the rift in the optics create a problem for the GOP. At the same time, the rift in the optics inside the Democratic Party might create a problem. Kamala Harris, the vice president, unseen for the past 6 days, not standing next to the president during his speech on Afghanistan. We understand that on Monday she's going to be going to Vietnam. Boy, JOHANNA, as a communications person, would you be worried that there's a little too much symbolism and irony with her in Vietnam as we're withdrawing from Afghanistan?
I don't think she needed to be at the president's side. President Biden was not at President Obama's side when we did the live address to the nation on the anniversary of Osama bin Laden's death.
Well, yeah, but JOHANNA, okay, come on. It's a little different when doing the address to the nation about that versus all of a sudden people falling off of planes and Americans having to go back into Afghanistan to rescue people. Those are a little different situations.
Let's be clear, though. They want to hear from the president.
Okay.
You're saying yourself. People want to hear from the president. So he's, managing those expectations. I think they had this trip planned a long time ago. Should they reconsider it? Probably. But are they going to? At this point, it seems like it's going forward. So I guess we're going to have to see what she has to say when she's there.
Yeah, we'll see if actually she gives any availability to reporters. We'll see if anybody is able to get a question. And they haven't with President Biden. He hasn't been willing to take them. Alyssa, I want to come full circle from your career that went through Capitol Hill, then to the Pentagon, Vice President's office, and then ending with President Trump. You're at the Department of Defense. I'm wondering sort of how you're watching these cringeworthy press conferences of John Kirby and either the Secretary of Defense or the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. You have to read on their faces, they just do not enjoy defending these policies.
Absolutely not. I worked with many of those men, Chairman Milley, someone I personally advised when I was at DOD, and I know well enough from my White House perspective that at the end of the Trump administration, he was one of the active voices advising the former president to keep a very small residual force in Afghanistan. He was making the argument that even with a 1,500 to 2,000 person force, you could hold the peace and over time scale down to even smaller. So I know that behind his teeth, he's grinning and bearing because he doesn't operationally agree with this. And John Kirby is someone I think extremely highly of, but they're in an untenable position. They're having to defend a terrible policy decision and then terrible operational execution, which DOD usually prides itself on. At least we're going to get things done the right way. And they've been unable to do that. And just one point I want to make, because JOHANNA hit on this, is most Americans agree we should withdraw from Afghanistan. However, virtually none think we should have withdrawn the way that we did, this disastrous, untimely, without looking out for American citizens and country, without evacuating Afghans who helped us. That's the problem. And by the way, leaving arms in the hands of the Taliban and empowering them for decades to come.
Yeah, but Alyssa, I mean, the truth is this was 20 years in the making. And, this was a number of people who just did not take the step to actually...
JOHANNA, I've got to run. I'm up against a hard break, but I promise that when you girls come back next week...
It's a bad marriage.
Yes.
It's a bad marriage. It's a bad breakup. It's going to be bad.
I like the divorce. I like the divorce analogy. When you come back next week, you get the first question, all right?
All right.
Thank you both.
Good.
Ladies, good to see you. Up next, we're introducing you to an American woman who is leading the effort to save Afghan